You bought a movie ticket last month. Maybe you also bought popcorn because somehow the popcorn always feels mandatory, even though nobody forces you to buy it. You sat in the dark for 2 hours and forgot the outside world existed. It felt simple: a ticket, a seat, a story. But the real answer to how that theater actually survives is far stranger than a story on a screen. The movie you watched was never really the product, it was the bait. Here is the number that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. On a typical new release, movie theaters keep only a small slice of what you paid for that ticket, sometimes as little as 10 to 20% in the opening weeks. The rest flows back to the studio that made the film. This arrangement is called film rental terms, and it is one of the oldest deals in Hollywood, dating back to the studio system of the early 20th century. The bigger the movie, the smaller the theater's cut tends to be, at least at first. So if theaters barely profit from the very thing playing on their biggest screen, how does an entire industry stay in business? The honest answer is sitting in the lobby, not the auditorium: popcorn, soda, candy. This is where theaters make almost all of their actual profit, and the markup is not subtle. A bag of popcorn that costs a theater a small fraction of $1 to produce can sell for 8, 10, sometimes more, once you count butter, size upgrades, and combo pricing. Industry estimates have long placed concession profit margins above 80%, dwarfing anything the box office produces. Theaters are not really in the movie business, they are in the snack business, and the movie is the reason you show up. So why does a food that is cheap, unhealthy, and available at any grocery store for a fraction of the price feel almost impossible to skip once you are standing in that lobby? Part of the answer comes down to something researchers call sensory-specific satiety, first studied in detail by psychologist Barbara Rolls. Her research found that the presence of a strong smell, particularly one associated with fat and salt, can trigger appetite even in someone who was not hungry moments earlier. Movie theater popcorn is popped in the lobby specifically, not in a back kitchen, and the smell is engineered to travel. That smell is not a side effect of convenience. It is doing marketing work before a single word of dialogue plays on screen. Then there is the ticket itself, and a psychological trick that has almost nothing to do with cinema and everything to do with how your brain processes spending you have already committed to. Once you have paid $15 or $20 for a ticket, a $5 bag of popcorn suddenly feels small by comparison, even though $5 did not feel small an hour earlier at the grocery store. Behavioral economists refer to this as relative pricing or anchoring, a concept popularized through decades of research by psychologist and Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman's work on judgment under uncertainty showed repeatedly that people rarely evaluate a price in isolation. They evaluate it against whatever number is sitting closest in memory. The ticket price becomes the anchor. Everything after it gets judged against that anchor, not against its actual cost. This is also why the small popcorn at many theaters is priced strangely close to the large. You have likely noticed this without naming it. A small might cost $6, a large costs $7.50. The gap looks tiny, so most people upgrade, telling themselves it is the smarter deal. Retail pricing researchers call this a decoy effect, where a deliberately unattractive middle option pushes customers toward the higher price choice that actually carries the better margin for the seller. The small size was never meant to be popular. It exists to make the large look reasonable. None of this requires theaters to trick you maliciously. It requires them to understand something your ancestors' brains were built around long before popcorn or pricing existed. Scarcity, timing, and sensory cues have always shaped human decision-making, because for most of human history, decisions about food had to be made quickly, based on smell and immediate availability, without the luxury of careful comparison shopping. A theater lobby recreates that exact pressure: warm smell, limited window before the film starts, a crowd of other people also buying. Your ancestors would have recognized this pattern instantly, just aimed at berries or meat instead of caramel corn. Now stretch the picture further because the economics of a theater are shifting again, and the shift tells you even more about what is really being sold. Streaming has cut deeply into the traditional release window. the length of time a film plays exclusively in theaters before becoming available at home. Studios have pushed that window down from months to sometimes just a few weeks. In response, many theater chains have leaned harder into what they can control, and increasingly that means the theater itself becomes the product, not just the venue for one. Reclining leather seats, recliner loyalty memberships, alcohol sales in states that allow it, premium formats charging significantly more per ticket, where the margin split with studios is often more favorable to the theater than a standard screening. This is the counterintuitive twist sitting underneath the whole industry. As the movie itself became easier to watch elsewhere, on a phone, a laptop, a home television. Larger than anything available a decade ago, theaters did not fight to keep the film exclusive. They shifted to selling something streaming cannot replicate at home: an event, a specific chair, a specific smell in a specific lobby, sold at a specific markup, wrapped around 2 hours in the dark that feels for exactly that long like it belongs only to you. Think about how strange that really is. An industry built around projecting stories onto a wall has quietly become an industry built around selling proximity, sensation, and a small window of exclusivity, almost none of which has anything to do with the story itself. The film draws you through the door. Everything that actually pays the electric bill happens in the 30 feet between that door and your seat. So the next time you buy a ticket and somehow leave with a bag of popcorn you never planned on, do not think of it as a lapse in judgment. Think of it as an ancient appetite for scarcity and smell, meeting a business model old enough to have perfected the exact moment your resistance is lowest. You bought a movie ticket last month. What you actually paid for was never fully on the screen. It was standing in the lobby the whole time, waiting for the smell to reach you first.